They have put together one of the better non-conferences in the country, and by the metrics right now, it is the best. And I think that says a lot about how Randy Bennett has gone about wanting to put this schedule together, realize understanding that I think the talent he has on this team, because this again, like, and I've been spouting it most of the offseason. This St. Mary's team, I think, is going to be better than a year ago. I think, despite the loss of Tommy Kuzi and Matthias Toss, they are deeper than a year ago. They're more talented than a year ago. I That doesn't mean to say that they're going to be better than a 5 seed this year, but they're not just a tournament team. They're a tournament team that can do damage. Hey everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the Unofficial WCC Hoops podcast. I'm Zach Farmer, and we are only 1 week away from the start of the college basketball season, 1 week away from games that count. And I can't tell you how excited I am to see this get going. We're starting to see some of the exhibition games already kick up. Gonzaga had one just this past weekend against Tennessee. We'll talk about that a little bit. We're starting to get more and more of the rankings out. We saw now the new Ken Palm rankings are out. We also now have seen a prediction on the average non-conference rankings, which we'll talk about that. And there's going to be a surprise, I think, for a lot of folks who haven't actually seen this already. And then we'll do my final preseason picks for the WCC, where I think everyone's going to finish, how I think this is going to go down. If you listen to any of the team previews, you might have an idea of where this is all going to go, but we'll consolidate it here and we'll get to that in just a bit. So let's start with Gonzaga and a couple different things about Gonzaga. So they played Tennessee in a charity game on Friday. You could view it. You were able to view it on pay-per-view, and they did lose this game. They did not shoot well from three. There were some defensive components that they have some work to do, but I'm not reading too much into anything about what happened on Friday. They played a high-level opponent, and this is a team who, again, I said they didn't shoot well from three. Gonzaga has shooters, so off night is an off night. I'm not going to read too much into what we saw. What I am going to not read too much into, but highlight, is the choice for the starters. And four are pretty obvious: Bolton, Hickman, Strother, Timmy. Those were the four almost everybody had on their bingo card. The fifth one was the question mark. And a lot of people had Malachi Smith, as did I. And how could you not have him high on your list of who might be the starter? A guy who averaged 20 a game last year, rebounds well, can do some of that, can be an elite scorer. But on Friday night, it was Anton Watson. And while he may not have been like the sexiest of picks to be in this lineup, this potentially high octane offense, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense because Watson, over the course of his career, has been the glue guy. He has been the one who will do the dirty work. He will do the tasks that are asked of him. He doesn't need the basketball. He will figure out a way to contribute in a positive way while he's on the floor. And I think that's why it makes a lot of sense, because when you look at the rest of this starting lineup, Bolton and Hickman are going to have the ball in their hands a lot of the time. Drew Timmy's going to be involved a ton, as is Julian Strother. Anton Watson's a guy you don't have to worry about. Anton Watson is a guy who is going to provide an additional level of toughness. He's going to be in the right place at the right time. He is an incredibly competent defender. Like, he's a really good rebounder. This is a guy like that they need in the lineup. And it's not to say like he wasn't going to be in the lineup if he didn't start, because Watson is going to see minutes, like significant minutes. That's not a question. But him with this group makes a ton of sense. And I think what makes it kind of what makes it more terrifying, not necessarily even that Watson in this lineup, it's Malachi Smith in the second unit. There aren't too many other teams in the country who are going to pull a 20-point per game guy off the bench. Again, college level, 20 points per game off the bench. And that's what Gonzaga will have with Malachi Smith coming off the bench. Again, lineups could change throughout the course of the year. Seeing this in game one against a high level opponent, I think says a lot. But we could also see like this mix and match. That doesn't mean that this will always be the starting lineup for every team if everything goes perfectly. This could be the starting lineup for bigger teams. Smith could be inserted for lineups that are going to be a little bit more athletic and are going to run and gun. We could see a lot of different variations, and we're going to see a lot of different variations of lineups that Gonzaga is going to run out there. The starting lineup, I don't think necessarily matters as much as, again, like we talk about it on various levels, that it's not a matter of how you start, it's how you finish and who ends up on the floor at the end of the game. And that will be, I think, the bigger key, especially when we see them play higher level opponents early on, when we get to see them up against Texas and Kentucky those first couple of weeks of the season. That's, I think, going to be a big component to what we see from Gonzaga. And because of this mix and matching, because they are so versatile, because we know they're going to be in the conversation all year long, what are the chances that they are able to pull it off? What are the chances they can finally win their championship? Well, Caesars has their odds out, and right now they have Gonzaga at 9-1, which is second best behind Carolina, and they're tied with Kentucky, which Kentucky's might change a little bit based on recent injury news. But to me, this seems about right. Gonzaga is not a team who has proven they can do it yet. So I think it would be premature to have them as an overall favorite. I think there's also just the level, the amount of teams who I think are going to legitimately compete for a championship. There are more of them this year than I think there have been in years past. I think most years you could say like point to like 3, 4, maybe 5 programs like, oh, these are the 4 or 5 who are going to have a shot. This year, it seems like there's a little bit more parity in that there's probably closer to like 8 or 9 who have a legitimate shot to win it all. And because, as you know, it's like, and we all know, March is one of the more unpredictable events in all of sports. That's what makes it so great. SEC, Big 12, leave the tournament alone. I'm just going to leave that note there. But I think 9-1 is about right. And Gonzaga, I think, has as good a shot as anybody. People are going to pick the teams who have done it before, who've been there, done that. The Carolinas, the Kentuckys, even though it's been a decade since Kentucky has won a championship. The Houstons, the Dukes, all these programs who are going to be at least in the conversation, the Michigans, that are going to be in the conversation when we get to Houston for the championship game. And a lot of that is obviously setting up for your seeding, setting up for all of that, setting up how your non-conference is going to be. And the KenPom rankings came out just a couple weeks ago. So we are starting to see like where the analytics kind of have each team going into the season. Obviously, a lot of these are going to change. We're going to see some big fluctuations up and down and everywhere in between. And what we also got to see was how each of the teams have now kind of scheduled their non-conference. What is the actual strength of the opponents that some of these that are non-conference opponents are seeing? And looking over the WCC non-conference ranks, you have some really strong non-conferences, and you have some oddly weak non-conferences, which is a little surprising to me, and we'll kind of get into that. So we'll go up the ranks. I'll start at the bottom, work my way up. Pacific has a non-conference rank of 225. There's really nothing on their schedule that really jumps at you. Stanford is probably their best non-conference game. Fresno State's in there as well. Fresno State is a solid non-conference game, but Stanford's the one in the preseason ranks that is the best one. Portland at 206. Now, this is probably going to change a lot once they get the second and third game of the Phil Knight Invitational onto their schedule, because they have North Carolina as their first game in that tournament, and they're in the top 10. I believe it's like they're at number, believe they're like 6 in the preseason KenPom. So this is going to change a lot because every team in that tournament is a legitimate top 50 team. So Portland's strength of schedule is going to change a lot. That 206 won't stand. So we'll see how far it actually goes up. Then it's USF at 196. And this is, again, this is something I talked about in the team preview for them. They have high aspirations for an NCAA tournament bid, a return to the NCAA tournament. This strength of schedule is the thing that concerns me. There's not a lot of opportunity to get big wins. You have Davidson on there. You have Arizona State also on the schedule, but Arizona State is a lower tier Pac-12 team. And so this is where I'm a little concerned about USF. At 196, this may not be a strong enough strength of schedule for them to get back to March, even if everything goes right. So a little bit of a concern there, but we'll see how it all plays out. San Diego at 189. Now we get into this jumble, kind of like we talked about, the jumble of teams 3 through 8, whatnot. Same thing with these strength of schedules. The average non-conference ranks. San Diego 189, Pepperdine 170, LMU 166, Santa Clara 163. I'd like to point out Santa Clara is the 4th best non-conference opponent rank in the preseason. BYU on 158. So between 158 and 189, there's 5 teams. So there's going to be a lot of wiggle room in there. So we could see a lot of teams jump up, jump down, and whatnot. Even though BYU has some high level opponents, they also have some low level opponents, and also have, I believe it's 4. They have 3 teams who are non-D1 on their schedule. And this is something that it does bother me a little bit that they have so many. I somewhat understand if there's 1 on your schedule. BYU has 3, and that's a little concerning. But theirs also probably should go up as well because they are going to be in the battle for Atlanta. So we'd expect their strength of schedule to also go up. The second best non-conference is Gonzaga at 135. Now we know what Gonzaga's schedule looks like. They have some high level opponents, but then they also have a lot of sub 200 opponents. There's a big gap between the best of their schedule and the bottom of their schedule. There's not a whole lot of in between for this team. And then the team who has the best non-conference, not only in the WCC, but according to this metric, the best average opponent rank in the entire country belongs to St. Mary's. And it's not close. It's at 104.7, which is the best in the country. And for anyone who has followed this league for long enough knows this was one of the things that drove most people nuts about St. Mary's. Everyone knew how talented this team was. Everyone knew how good they were. But the schedule did not match the talent level. The schedule did not allow whole lot of opportunity for this team to show how good it was, to beat better opponents. And in the last few years, we have seen this schedule be a really, really good schedule. Again, last year I was saying that might have been the best schedule that St. Mary's has ever played in the non-conference. And what happened? They ended up a 5 seed, the highest they've ever been. This year, it looks like on average it might be even better. You have a legitimate top 5 team in Houston in the schedule. You have a top 20 team in San Diego State, I should say. You have consistent programs like the Vermonts. You have a North Texas program who's on the come. You have Wyoming, who's supposed to be really good this year. You have Vandy, even though Vandy's usually like low tier SEC, they're always like somewhere in the 60-70 range. Fresno State, which is a potential other game that they could get. Washington's another game they could get through the Wooden Legacy. They have put together one of the better non-conferences in the country, and by the metrics right now, it is the best. And I think that says a lot about how Randy Bennett has gone about wanting to put this schedule together, understanding that I think the talent he has on this team, because this again, and I've been spouting it most of the off season. This St. Mary's team, I think, is going to be better than a year ago. I think, despite the loss of Tommy Kuzi and Matthias Toss, they are deeper than a year ago. They're more talented than a year ago. That doesn't mean to say that they're going to be better than a 5 seed this year, but they're not just a tournament team. They're a tournament team that can do damage. And this to me, again, says a lot about where this program now is. Like, we talk about how, well, I've definitely mentioned this in the past, where I thought it was St. Mary's and Gonzaga ended up about neck and neck right around 2013, 2014. And then something happened. Gonzaga's recruiting took the next step. And in 2017, when they reached the title game, that was like kind of like the final announcement that Gonzaga had finally arrived. And they were no longer just the team who can make deep runs. Now they were a title contender year in and year out. And ever since 2017, that's exactly what they have been, a title contender year in and year out. And St. Mary's looked like they kind of got left behind a bit. And even through the Jock Landale years where it looks like, oh, like they're going to be better, it's like they peaked at a 7 seed. And there were questions about the schedule during those years. And since then, what we have seen is that the schedule has gotten better. The talent has gotten better. This team has a different personality than it did even just a few years ago, where we're used to those St. Mary's teams were high octane offense. And now you have a team who is defense first, who is one of the grittier teams in the country. Last year, the motto was gritty, not pretty, because that's exactly what it was. It was gritty, not pretty, to see this team play at times. But all they did was pick up W's. All they did was win. And so I think that the schedule says a lot. I think that the St. Mary's team has put itself in position to be better than a year ago. I think they have the talent to be better than a year ago. But we'll see how it all plays out. Again, season starts next week, and they start out with three really good mid-major programs. It's Oral Roberts, Vermont, and North Texas. So they're going to get tested early. They're going to get tested often. Again, there's not a bad opponent on their schedule until they get the conference play. And that's how you get the best average non-conference rank before the season even starts. Okay, so let's dive into the preseason picks. Again, if you've been following along, you kind of have an idea of where all these ranks are going to be and how I'm going to do this. I don't think I've really changed my rankings all too much in the last week or so. I've become pretty set on where I think everyone's going to fall. All right, let's start it. Number 10 is Pacific. I think this one's pretty obvious. The Tigers, I don't think, added enough talent to really make a difference in this conference. They were ninth a year ago. This is a program that was still in flux. They're still trying to find their identity. They did get a couple of transfers from Oklahoma State, but this is a team whose number one flaw was offense. This team could not score. They could not shoot. And I don't see that they have acquired the pieces to really make a significant difference in what we saw a year ago. Jordan Ivy Curry, I think, is a great pickup. I think that will be a helpful component to that, but he wasn't a terribly good shooter either. And this league requires you to be not only just a scorer, but to be efficient in your scoring. So Pacific is my number 10. Number 9, I'm going with LMU. LMU, I think, is going to be better than a year ago. I think they're pointing in the right direction. I think a lot of it has to do with health. I know that Stan Johnson and the players did not want to use the injury bug as part of the excuse, but it was a reality. You had Damian Douglas, who missed a good chunk of the season. You had Cam Shelton, who missed some of the season. You had Jalen Anderson, who missed a good chunk of the season. You had a lot of guys who missed time. So going into this year, I'm looking at that team. I'm looking at the talent they have in place, the transfers they've brought in. This is a team I think that can do better. I think they're going to get closer to the rest of the pack, but that doesn't mean that their positioning in the standings is going to change all that much. So they are going to move up one spot to 9, but I think that's about as far as they go. Number 8, San Diego. I like a lot of the coaches. I have questions about this team. I don't see them they're going to have a lot of growing pains early on. There's talent on this team, like make no question about that. But everyone else has also gotten better. And there's continuity on a lot of the other programs that does not exist in San Diego. And I think that they're going to run into the problem of how all of their pieces are going to gel with each other. I think it's going to take a while. And I don't necessarily think it's going to be like an overnight thing for San Diego, even though they have a relatively easy schedule in the non-conference. So I think San Diego with Lavin at the helm, I think it's going to just take some time. And this might be a 1-2 year process before we really start to see San Diego turn into what they potentially could be. Because right now, I don't quite see it having that big jump. Again, this is a team that was 7th a year ago. I don't see a huge change. So I have them in 8th. Because one of the teams I do see a change in is Pepperdine at 7. I think Pepperdine they clearly have the talent between Maxwell Lewis, between Houston Mallet, between Mike Mitchell Jr., between Jan Zedek. Like, this is a team that has talent. This is a team that is going to be way more competitive, I think, than they were a year ago. Defense was their number one problem, and they know it's a problem. They're aware that it's a problem. So I think we will start to see some changes, some mental mistakes be cleaned up. I think we'll start to see them play with more efficiency. But I don't want to make the big leap that they're going to be that much better on defense than a year ago. Because you have some really good offensive teams in this conference, and that presents a problem in and of itself. Even if you play good defense, some of these teams are just good enough to beat you. And Pepperdine, I think, I think it's going to be a slower climb back into it than many people than some may want to believe. I think it's going to be a slower grind for Pepperdine. I think they're going to be better. I think they're going to be more competitive. I think they may only be like a game or two out of 5th place. I don't think it's going to be a huge gap. But I think as of right now, I would slate Pepperdine for 7th. All right. So next, to round out the bottom half of the league, I'm going with Santa Clara. the Broncos of Herb Sendek showed a lot last year. We saw what they were what they were capable of doing. We saw the potential. We saw what they could do with a guy like Jalen Williams. And this year, they have still have a lot of the pieces still there. Now, obviously, Jalen Williams isn't there, and Josip Brankic isn't there, and PJ Pipes isn't there. Big holes. But you bring in Carlos Stewart, you bring in a Jordan Pajemski, Brandon Pajemski. You bring back Keyshawn Justice. You still have Jacob Holt, Parker Brown. You still have Jaden Bediako. There's still a lot of talent on this team. You still have I said Carlos Stewart initially. And yes, Carlos Stewart is back, but the transfer Carlos Marshall is also another key component to what Santa Clara is going to be able to do. The return of Jordan Williams is another key component. This is a deeper team than I think they had a year ago. I think there's more pieces that they can go to. I think they have a more experienced group now. They're not as talented as a year ago. You don't lose a Jalen Williams and immediately think you're going to replace him. But they're still going to be competitive. They're going to be tough. This was one of the more efficient offensive teams a year ago. They know, and this was a team that knows that defense was their Achilles heel, and the thing that they did not do particularly well a year ago. And that's been a focus for them all off season. That's been a focus for the Broncos. I see Santa Clara starting to they'll fall back because again they finished in third a year ago. I do think they're going to fall back a bit, but they're not going to fall off a cliff. This is not a team that's going to just be, oh no, Jalen Williams, they're done. They're going to be competitive. They're going to be in this. I think they're going to be hovering right around the middle part of the league. And so right now, I would slate them for sixth. All right. Number five. Number five, I have BYU. I know the coaches picked them to be tied in third. I know a lot around the country have also predicted BYU to be right there behind St. Mary's. In fact, some even think that they're going to be more competitive with St. Mary's, and I don't see that. BYU, I think, is the fifth best team in this league. I don't think they quite solved the offensive problem that they had a year ago, even with the addition of Rudy Williams. And I think that's a big addition. He's incredibly efficient. He's going to be their primary scorer. I think that was a big pickup for them. How quickly he integrates into the rest of the system, I think, is going to be key. This is still a small team. Gideon George is probably going to be playing the 4. You're probably going to still see Fus Traore playing a lot at the 5, which really is not the ideal spot for him. How is Jackson Robinson going to really fit in as quickly? Because Trevin Nell being out the first couple months is going to hurt. That's your best 3-point shooter, so you need someone else to be able to kind of step up into that role. How much more can you expect out of Spencer Johnson? How much more can you expect to get out of Atiki Ali Atiki? Now, I do think he's going to have a jump. I do think he's going to be playing better, more minutes, and he's going to be playing more impactful minutes. At the same time, again, where's the offense coming from? Okay, I have Fus Traore, I have Rudy Williams. I don't know where I'm consistently getting points from after that. And because of that, because of BYU struggles that we saw in WCC play, and the fact that it looked like in the offseason, I don't think that those concerns were addressed. BYU, to me, is going to be filling in that 5th slot. Portland is who I have at 4. I don't think it can be understated just how impressive the rise of Portland has been over the last year. Portland was the bottom feeder. Portland had won all of 3 conference games over 3 seasons. They were awful, and there's no way to sugarcoat that. And in 1 year, Shante Liggins took that last place team and they went 7-7, finished in sixth place, had a great run toward the end of conference play. Almost everybody returns from that roster. They added some key pieces. They added some size in Joey St. Pierre. They're going to be better than a year ago. They have the confidence that they're going to be better. They have the swagger that they're going to be better, that they're not satisfied with where they finished a year ago. And remember, they only finished like a half game behind BYU to be fifth. So it's not inconceivable that Portland is going to make this next step, that they're going to make this next leap. The one thing I will caution about Portland, though, is that because of where they were positioned a year ago, they didn't have to see Gonzaga twice. They didn't have to see St. Mary's twice. And they will this year. And those extra 2 games could make or break where they finish in the standings. But based off the talent, based off what we have seen Portland do so far, based on just the conversations and people you talk to, like, Portland is going to be riding high, but Portland will no longer surprise anybody either. But they're expecting that. They know that they're not going to surprise anybody in this league anymore. And that they are the trendy pick. That they could be the one that breaks through. So I think I have them solidly in fourth place. And I think I've moved Portland up just a couple spots, like from where I was thinking at the beginning of the offseason. I was like, maybe they're fifth place team, maybe they're still sixth. And now it's like I'm pretty confident that they're going to be in that 4 slot. 3, USF. USF has done enough, I think, to prove that they are the third best team in the league right now. Even after the success of last year and losing Bouye and Masalski and Tape, there's still enough on this roster, and then they brought in enough on the transfer front to really still be in the conversation. The Dons are still one of the better offensive teams in this conference. I think the interior defense is going to be where my hang up still is. Like, are they going to be able to rebound enough? Are they going to defend the paint? They don't really have that shot blocker, that rim protector they did a year ago. And that's going to be a key for this team to figure out how they're going to manage that. I like some of the pickups. I like the Tyler Roberts pickup. I like the Marcus Williams pickup. Tony Rokak from San Diego is another. UC San Diego is another great pickup. So again, they've refilled the cupboard. They've reloaded, and I mean this team is going to might be even better offensively because there are more weapons. I think Julian Rishwain's going to have a breakout year. I think we're going to see more from Shabazz. I think we're going to see more out of Zane Meeks coming off the bench. I think we're going to see more from a lot of the guys on this roster. And now, do I think that means they're as good as a year ago? No, I don't think that they're as good as a year ago. But 3 through 8 in this conference are not as far apart as they have been in years past. As we've talked about all off season, this is going to be one of the more competitive, high intense conference seasons we've seen in a long time, and that includes last year. 3 through 8 is going to be really interesting to see just how it all shapes out, how everyone battles throughout the course of conference play. But USF, I have it 3. So right now, USF 3, Portland 4, BYU 5, Santa Clara 6, Pepperdine 7, San Diego 8, LMU 9, Pacific 10. Now we'll get to the 2 obvious ones. St. Mary's at 2. St. Mary's reminded everybody last year who the clear where the clear tiers are, and that St. Mary's is a tier above everybody else in the league outside of Gonzaga. This was a team that reminded us how efficient they are, how well coached they are. They were a team that reminded us how talented they are, even though they don't have the flashiest of guys. And I think that's sometimes what a lot of people forget about St. Mary's, is that even though they're not the flashiest, they have some really talented guys who know how to play a role and fit into a system. That's what St. Mary's has. And this St. Mary's team, again, I think is better than a year ago. I think there's confidence in this group that they have work left to do. I think there's confidence in this group that they saw what they were capable of doing a year ago. And their non-conference schedule, the way that they're going to set themselves up getting into conference play, this team has the potential to be a special team. And even had it like Andy Katz has them as one of his Final Four dark horses, which I think sounds so actually incredibly out there, even in the most optimistic of views. Thinking of St. Mary's as a Final Four dark horse contender is incredible. And I'm not going to say that I think that they're a Final Four team. They would even be a dark horse Final Four team. I would enjoy the ride if that is what came to fruition. And then number one is obviously Gonzaga. The Bulldogs have shown year in, year out they are the class of the league, that they are a national title contender. They are consistently one of the top 3 teams in the country over the last 5 years, 6 years now. They are one of the deepest teams in the league. As many Gonzaga people would like to remind the rest of the conference, most of their bench guys would start for everyone else in the conference, or that there are only a couple of guys who would start for Gonzaga if it were the other way around. They are the class of the league. They are going to finish first. It's a matter of whether or not that's an undefeated season or not. I think St. Mary's could sneak one in there. I think that BYU has the potential to do that as well, possibly in Provo. I don't think there are too many teams who are going to compete at that level with Santa Clara. Maybe, or sorry, I said Santa Clara, as I had Santa Clara in my head. They are not one of those teams this year. But I think USF could potentially scare Gonzaga if they get them down on the hilltop and then catch them in a rough week. I think Gonzaga plays both St. Mary's and USF in the same week. I'd have to recheck the schedule. But for Gonzaga, it's a matter of like, is this like, are they going to have the full sweep in conference play? Are they going to drop one or two? And as far as Vegas goes, I think that we're going to see, I think it's going to be St. Mary's Gonzaga in the title game again. I think we're going to see kind of as we use the norm for championship Tuesday for the WCC tournament. And this, and being BYU's final season, they will have been in the conference since 2011-12. They will have gone 11 seasons, no regular season championships, no tournament championships. When a lot of the talk at the beginning was how they were going to dominate the league. And in which time Gonzaga has become a national power and St. Mary's is not that far behind. And BYU has slipped just a bit. So those are my picks for the WCC preseason. So Gonzaga 1, St. Mary's 2, USF 3, followed by Portland, BYU, Santa Clara, Pepperdine, San Diego, LMU, and then Pacific. And we're going to get to see how these teams are going to fare starting next week. Again, we are only just a few days away from real games being played, games that count. Tip off is coming soon. I'm excited to get to it. I'm sure all of you are too. If you haven't listened to them and you want to hear some of the team previews, please go back and listen to the last 3 previous episodes. You can see all the team previews in there. Look at the description to find your teams. And so that'll do it for this week. We'll be back next week to start to preview games, live games that we will have starting next Monday. And that will wrap it up for this one. So be sure to subscribe on your favorite streaming service, subscribe on YouTube, follow me on Twitter at Post by Zach. And until then, I'm Zach Farmer, and I will catch you later.